All right, everyone, welcome to another ISO interview. And I'll tell you what, after the efforts of last week with Michael from Married at First Sight, he certainly had a bit to say. And I think this character we've got tonight as well, he's very much the same, a big name in sport and especially AFL, and it's Ricky Chicken Nixon. Chicken, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks, mate. How's everything in Adelaide?
Mate, it's been we're pretty lucky with ISO that our restrictions aren't as bad as what you guys are dealing with over there. We're still able to get out on the golf courses. I know I've been watching a bit of Sammy Newman's stuff that he's not happy about, but we can at least get out and do a couple of things.
Yeah, no, I've got a lot of friends over in Adelaide and South Australia, and they keep boasting about the fact they can play golf. And, of course, Sam's one of my closest friends, and even yesterday, I saw him downstairs at the famous Bakehouse Cafe below my place, and he had on the face mask. And he's the only bloke I know 5 years ago was wearing leather gloves because he was worried about getting a virus 5 years ago. He's a classic, Sam. I love him.
No, he's one of the absolute best, mate. But let's talk about yourself. You've probably pioneered, or you definitely have pioneered, sports management in Australia, and you've turned it into what it is now. How did you get started in that first, and what made you decide to go into sports manager? Obviously, 11 seasons in the VFL, AFL with Carlton, St Kilda, and Hawthorn. What was it that the turning point that made that happen?
I guess there was a few things, and it's quite coincidental that you've asked that question, because the massive documentary that's been on about Michael Jordan, it's actually what sparked the whole interest from me. I was a phys ed teacher at Carey Grammar, a very prestigious private school in Melbourne. And Michael Jordan was, coming up on my TV all the time. And I said, why haven't we got a Michael Jordan in Australia? And as it turned out, the AFL at the time, Ross Oakley, the CEO, and Jeff Brown, who was the head of legal, who went on to be head of Channel 9, very successful businessman now, they invited me to a meeting and basically said, look, we don't want to work against you, Ricky, if you go into player management, we want to work with you. So we're going to send you to America. So they sent me over to America, and they set up meetings with the baseball, the basketball, the gridiron. It was just amazing. And people wouldn't ever have dreamt that the AFL helped set me up. And then I became their biggest foe about 2 years later. So it was a bit of luck. It was a bit of timing. I saw this bloke, Michael Jordan. I actually met him in the US. Amazing meeting. Came back and I said, I've got to find Michael Jordan. The next day, this kid, Wayne Carey, rang me, said he was looking for a manager, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's a great doco as well, already straight into the first two episodes. It's going to be excellent to watch that all play out. But Wayne Carey, how long did it take? Obviously, a massive North fan. You probably didn't get to appreciating, being born in 95, I probably didn't get to appreciate just how good he was. But how long did it take you to go, this kid's got a bit of talent?
Oh, look, it probably took a good year. He certainly, the minute I saw him play, and I had a pretty good sort of, what would you say, appreciation of what I thought would be the stars. And, I had this sort of template, I suppose. You had to be a key forward. You ticked that box. You had to dominate the game. You had to be marketable. You had to be good looking sort of stuff, etc. I mean, Gary Ablett ticks all those boxes, all apart from the good looking side of it, which you'll hate me for. But, Wayne's brother actually was managing him, and he actually came to me and said, my brother will be the greatest player of all time. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, mate, no worries. Then, of course, he did go on to be the greatest. And look, I get asked that question all the time, who's the best player? I think Wayne's the best player by a long way, but I think Gary Ablett's the most freakish player to ever play the game. If I had 10 tickets to watch them both play, I'd probably use the whole 10 on Gary. But Wayne was consistently brilliant every week. He never played 2 bad games in a row. Gary would sometimes go missing a bit for 4 or 5 weeks, but then he'd kick 14 goals, unheard of in home and away games. I think he did it 3 times from memory. Just absolutely unbelievable. 9 goals in a grand final, those sort of things. But a friend of mine, Mike Sheehan, the famous Herald Sun writer over here, I was talking to him not long ago, and I said, who do you barrack for? And he said, well, I used to barrack for North Melbourne, but when Wayne Carey left, I lost all interest. I said, yeah, so did my bank account.
Absolutely, no doubt. We're going to touch on those two boys in a little bit more depth later, mate. But I want to get onto yourself, because before Ricky Nixon, the player management, there was Ricky Nixon, the footballer, mate. Tell us a little bit about your career. Obviously, 11 seasons for, I reckon, what is about 60, 62, 63 games. Yep. How did you go at the level?
Well, the AFL actually, it was quite funny. It was probably 2 years ago now. I got this call from someone at the AFL. I won't say who it was. And he said, "Oh, Chicken, we've got some good news and bad news for you." And I said, "Oh, what's the good news?" He said, "You're going into the Hall of Fame." I said, "Oh, really?" Thinking it must have been because of my player management or something. He said, I said, "Well, what's the bad news?" He said, "The bad news is you're going in because you got the longest career for the least amount of games." I said, "Okay, that's not great." But no, I grew up in Bendigo with a little fat kid called Greg Williams. And, you know, funny, he got to the Hall of Fame and was he and cut 4 times, and he had handled a left time pitch along with rookie, and he's gone on to be 2, but they should have been 3. And then when he actually was asked what was his motivation, he said, "Look, when your best mate Ricky Nixon gets a game ahead of you, that's motivating enough for anyone."
Absolutely. Now, I know there was a season there with Carlton. I think your emergency, it's probably close to a record, 13 times. Your first emergency in that premiership year. How was it? Was there just a lot of playing on the cusp, or over that period, your injuries? Like what allowed you to get on for that long with only playing that many games of footy?
Oh, definitely injuries killed me. I had missed over 200 games with injuries, and the problem was I was actually an athlete playing. I wasn't an outside player as such. I was a sort of a very much like an Alex Rance type intercept marking player, and an elite sort of kick. I'd regularly kick 60-metre goals. You don't see that these days. In fact, at Moorabbin, there's 2 highlights of me kicking a torpedo out from full back that went past the centre of the ground, which was over 90 metres. Now, you don't see anyone kick the ball 90 metres these days. But playing at 69 kilos in the 80s against 120-kilo blokes just wasn't the go. And, I'd love to play now. I'd love to be drafted in perhaps 2000 onwards. I probably would have had a different career. But, look, I couldn't be happier with how it's worked out. The fact I played at 2 of the greatest clubs of all time, 2 most successful, Carlton and Hawthorn, actually set me up, because the business contacts I made at Carlton, I've still got a lot of them now. And at Hawthorn, it was more about just they taught me how to be successful. St Kilda was a different proposition, but I still managed a lot of the great names there, the Nick Rewalts of this world, Nick Del Santos, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And mate, I want to go into the nickname Chicken and the Toot Toot. I actually get the nickname Chook now, and Chooker Nixon, and get a few gags on the back of that myself. But the Toot Toot, it's worldwide now. It's just about trademarked.
It's just extraordinary how it all started. I'll start with the chicken side of it, but everybody, even my partner, my kids call me Chicken. I go, "It's not Chicken, it's Dad, all right?" It's one of those nicknames that it's superseded my own name, I suppose. Even in the street, I get ladies in their 70s going, "G'day, Chicken, how are you?" And you go, "Oh, God, this is ridiculous." How it started was when I was at Carlton. I was only 19 at the time, I think. We had a Sunday training session. It was just, back in those days, it was standard to train after the day before when you played, and then sink about 24 cans of beer. So while we were in the rooms, Wow Jones, a big ruckman, bought everybody a hamburger with a lot. And you know how hamburgers got a lot, are about that big. So I go to eat mine. I started with a knife and fork. And everyone's looking at me going, what are you doing with a knife and fork? And then Wow's going, "I know why. He's got the smallest mouth of all time," which I had. And so he called me Chicken Lips. And the lips part lasted about 4 weeks, I reckon, got shortened to Chicken. So it's not really anything to do with a chicken, but it's a good name. And it's sort of stuck along over the years. And, I like it. It's one of those names, I guess, that has worked out. And then when I got on social media, I didn't set out to probably be the social media celebrity, what word or whatever that I've become. And it just came about when one day I said something funny, and a guy on Twitter said, "All aboard the chicken train." And I went toot toot, thinking nothing of it. And then the next day I did a video on a private school footy game, and I ended it with toot toot. And all the kids started going toot toot. Their parents started going toot toot. I mean, even today I was walking down the street about to go and play a bit of bash the tennis ball against a brick wall, and these blokes went past me and, "Hey, Chicken, toot toot." So I guess it's a bit like Rex Hunt with yibbida yibbida and some of those famous sayings. It's probably one that's going to stick with me forever. Toot toot.
I don't think it's going anywhere. It is an absolute trademark of its own. Now, you called your player management business Flying Start. Where did that name come from, and who was your first official client?
Yeah, it's a good question. The Flying Start came from right when I started. The Olympics were on, and it was a 100-metre final. And they're on the blocks, set, bang, and they're off to a flying start. I've gone, flying start, that's a good name. So yeah, I've used it, and look, I just started a new company, Flying Start Medical, with my health business. It's been great to me, the name, and it'll always be with me and always be dear to my heart, I suppose. So yeah, that's where it started.
Absolutely. And your first official client?
Oh, sorry, yeah. First official client was actually a guy called Mick Dwyer, who played with me at St Kilda. No one would even probably remember him. And then after that, I signed a few of the St Kilda boys, Stuart Lowe, Danny Frawley, those sort of guys. Trevor Barker did a bit of work with me. And then after that, it was probably about 2 years after that. My accountant was actually in partnership with me. But then we decided when I retired from football, it was a conflict of interest when I was playing to be doing contracts. But my dad built me a wooden handball target, and I went out to shopping centres and I got them to pay me $400. And I took 3 players. I gave them all $100, and I kept $100. Little did I know it was costing me $70 in petrol, probably more in my time. I was probably losing money. But the players would go to training, and they'd go, Ricky Nixon just made me $100. Then most people would be listening to this go, well, big deal, $100. If it was $1,000, it'd be all right. But back in 1992, $100 was a lot of money. And all the players were ringing me, can I sign with you? I signed 90 players in 2 days, something like that. It was unbelievable. The phone just didn't stop. And then it snowballed with, of course, the famous Club 10, which I got that idea from when the AFL sent me to America. There was a thing over there called the Quarterback Club, which is basically their 10 best quarterbacks in a group. And they used them to market. And the way it worked in America was that, say there was a Telstra as a brand over there with the phones that were all around America. Well, they were able to market all around Australia. So what I did was when I came back and started it, and call it luck, I suppose, this small TV network called Foxtel had just started. And Optus had the football rights. So Foxtel signed me on a 3-year $1 million deal to have Club 10. So they had Wayne Carey, Gary Ablett, all the best players in the game were signed to Foxtel, but the game itself, the AFL, was signed to Optus. So you can imagine how happy they were with me at the time.
Oh, and have a look at it now. So you basically you've got Foxtel their leg up in AFL footy.
Yeah, and look, they've always been part of my life for 25 years. And I've got a lot of good friends that are still there. And Brian Walsh, who started with Foxtel, was the first person to work for him, I think, because he's a guru at TV production, that side of things. And Foxtel will always be. As I look across over my laptop here, there's a picture of Gary Ablett with a gun and a hat. Imagine doing this in these days, pointing the gun, and that's a Foxtel ad, right? You just wouldn't be able to do that these days, would you? I mean, if you hold a gun up as an advertisement, you'd be put in jail probably.
There'd be certainly some crucifying on social media, if not the worst. But that Club 10, obviously said how about it come about, but you had some massive names in that group, and obviously Wayne Carey, but Gary Ablett Senior as well, as you touched on. You had the best of the best in the AFL.
Yeah, look, and it was people like Gavin Wanganeen, having an Indigenous player in the group was fantastic. Of course, Gary Ablett, but people forget people like Gary Lyon were in it. Gavin Brown, who was an absolute superstar at Collingwood, but very rarely gets spoken about. Even my great mate, Diesel Williams, was in it. Glenn Jakovich, who, of course, had the great rivalry with Wayne Carey. Stuart Lowe, who at the time was an absolute, probably the best mark I've ever seen in AFL football, to be honest, the biggest hands ever. So it was actually the players that I added after it. People think Club 10 was 10 players. There was actually 11 players in it. There was this young bloke, Matthew Richardson, who I stuck in there. And you wouldn't believe it. He was, at the time, he was probably 19. And he wasn't a star, let me tell you. And I signed him. And I said, you're basically an apprentice. I think you're going to develop into a Wayne Carey or a Gary Ablett. Sure enough, the next day, he did his knee in Sydney. And I'll never forget this. I was home in bed, and that was the days when you had a phone beside the bed with a cable on it. And it rang, and my wife said, don't answer it. Yeah, don't answer it. It's like 11 o'clock. I said, I better answer. And it's Richo, and he's got, mate, please don't put me out of Club 10. And I was going to put him out of Club 10, right? I'm thinking, nah, he's out for 12 months. I'm putting him out. I said, all right, mate. No, I was always going to stand by you. No worries. Yeah, I'll see you later, mate. I'll keep you in Club 10. I hung up because he went on to be an absolute superstar. And to be honest, he's probably one of my best friends out of footy. He's just a most loyal, just best bloke you'll ever meet.
Yeah, and a great, absolute great footballer as well. And we're going to touch on a couple of probably the harder issues you had to deal with as a player, manager, and that. But out of all the players, who was the easiest player to deal with when it comes to negotiations and contracts?
Oh, look, a player that a lot of people probably forget a bit now because he's getting on a bit, is Doug Hawkins. He was absolutely fantastic to deal with. Matthew Richardson, but even a couple of the players at the Western Bulldogs, Dale Morris, who's only just retired, just a fantastic bloke. And just those sort of guys just play footy because they love footy. Then there's other players who are playing for other reasons, not for other reasons, but they're so high profile and, they're out there and, they're pretty high up in social media and all those sort of things. But, I'd love to have had a Club 10 in 2020 and who you'd add to it now. Because, people asked me the other day who would be in it. I suppose the standouts to me, I know Buddy Franklin's at the other end of his career, but he's the standout to me as a marketing weapon. Then after that, I think it probably is Patrick Cripps, to be honest. Others argue it's Fife. I think Lachie Neale's a great player in Brisbane. Dangerfield's up there, no doubt, still at Geelong. And at Collingwood, is it really Darcy Moore yet? Not quite, even though I coach Darcy and he's my son's best friend. But, there's not – back in the day when I played in the 80s, there was probably 10 to 12 superstars in the Carlton team. Now you wouldn't be able to name more than 3 genuine superstars, I don't think, in a team.
100%. And it'd be interesting to see you actually do your current Club 10, who would be in it as well. There's a little social media go for you, I reckon, there, Ricky, as well. But we touched on players, not playing for money, but certainly that's a part of it, and local clubs and whatnot. Obviously, with everything that's going on at the moment, Dougie Hawkins as well. I've seen him at a Sportsman's Night, absolute ripper. Obviously, they're quite impacted, and not only yourself, but a lot of those players that you've managed with. Really amazing stories to tell. It's affecting all of those boys, but as well with local footy, we have this issue with playing for money and that sort of thing. Do you reckon what's happening at the moment, it's going to change the way as we sort of think about playing the game?
I do. I think a lot of local footballers aren't going to like what I'm about to say, but I think it probably is going to end match payments at local footy. I mean, I know in South Australia it's a bit different. It is amateur I think in Adelaide, around Adelaide, or certainly in Perth it is, sorry. But yeah, I think over here, like there's some players who are getting sometimes up to $2,000. I mean, that's just not going to happen anymore. Players would want to start getting used to having to work again. And, there's not a lot of clubs can afford that sort of money, but certainly match payments of $500, $600, $700 is very, very common throughout Victoria and country footy. I reckon that's going to be down at $250 if you're lucky. And the AFL is definitely going to have to produce some money for local clubs to survive the next 12 months till we get, say, a proper season underway next year. At this stage, I can't see local football commencing again this year with any great length of season. I think they might get away with about an 8-game season through August and September, but even then it makes it hard to play finals because local cricket starts the first week of October. So very, very difficult. Most of the clubs, and I get a lot of calls and messages about, what can we do and, what should we do and all that sort of thing. I don't have the answers because until we get past this next 4 to 6 weeks and they bring the lockdowns down, there's not really much we can do.
No, absolutely. And obviously in sporties as well, that's been a big effect on yourself and those players as well.
Yeah, well, Dane Swan and I had a good chat today. Swanee and I started doing shows back in February and they went off their you-know-whats. And we had, I think it's something like 18 shows booked from the start of April to about probably 3/4 of the way through May. All of them cancelled now for obvious reasons. But all those clubs are desperate to still have us later in the year. But I keep saying, well, I don't know. And Swanee's saying today, when do you reckon we'll start? And I said, well, I don't know, mate. If I knew, I'd tell you, but I'd only be guessing. And I'd say at this stage, we're probably booked in for next year, same time next year, because the only way I can see us getting out and doing speaking gigs would be probably from September, October, November onwards.
No, absolutely. It's going to leave a fair dent, that's for sure. Now, I want to go on to a bit more of a serious topic and something that you're very well across, and that's the concussion rule and concussions in the AFL. Do you think that we're now at the stage where we're doing the right thing for the current players, and should we still be doing more for the past players as well?
Oh, look, I think that definitely we're heading down the right track, I suppose. Firstly, every player now would realise that it's a high risk to play football at any level because you get hit 360 degrees. People probably, if you think about this logically, you probably get hit in the head at least 20 times every game of football, even at under 12s. But they're just knocks like that, you know. It's not a knock that knocks you out. But everybody reacts differently. You know, Greg Williams, one of my best mates, he got knocked out, I think, 12 times, like knocked out. Now, the research I've done is that if you get knocked out for over a minute, in other words, out cold where you're on the ground, you're effectively brain dead. Your heart's still going, but your body's not. And when you get to about 50, that's when you can start to have some problems. Now, I'm not going to go into length about Danny Frawley, but he got knocked out at the MCG one day for 4 minutes. Now, they're saying 1 minute affects you when you get to 50. Greg got knocked out 12 times. Johnny Platten, who I played at Hawthorn, similar. Going through very difficult periods of their lives where their memories aren't as good as, and it's frustrating to them and they get angry. And yes, they're on better medication now that's helping. But for local footballers, you know, no one knows the answer because unfortunately, if you start to lose your memory, you can't tell us what actually happened the last 20 years. So when it goes to court, the judge is going to say, well, Mr. AFL, did you warn the player that this could happen to him? And the AFL are going to say, yeah, we did everything we could. Well, show us where you did. And they haven't got any evidence of that. They've destroyed all the medical records at clubs, which is an absolute disgrace. And when the judge says to the player, well, tell me, Mr. Williams, exactly what happened? Well, Mr. Williams is going to say, well, I don't know. I can't remember. So that's why I'm collecting data, because the only way a judge is going to be able to make a decision is if they see data that's been collected. And by data, I mean in my footy records, not all of them, but a lot of them, I've got marked, yeah, he got taken off the ground that, on March the 13th, 1998 at Arden Street, Corey McKernan, after a knock, and then at least it's documented when these things happen.
Yeah, so with that as well, with the AFL getting rid of all their medical history, is that purely, from your point of view, purely a way to wipe their hands clean of anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. And look, I careful what I say because I don't want clubs to think I'm about to start a war with them, because I'm not. All I want is a fair and reasonable outcome for players that don't deserve to be lying on the sofa at home, drinking all day because they're miserable. They can't remember anything. They don't even know who their best mate was playing football, but they can remember going to kindergarten, because memory loss is always about, or mostly about, short term. It's not about, usually you can remember going to primary school, but you can't remember the bloke you met in the cafe yesterday. So, yeah, there's a long way to go, Matty, but hopefully we can get a good resolution.
And Johnny Platten, now, I was having this chat today with one of our owners, Mark Cosgrove. Johnny Platten, very close to us. He's been heavily involved with Central Districts, and so are we, and I love the rat. He's an absolute ripper. He'd have to go down as one of the all-time greats, if not, he'd be in the top couple, surely.
Oh, look, he's definitely one of the best players I played with, just courageous. He basically had both sides of the game. He'd win the contested footy, but he also could run quickly. Very different play to, say, Diesel Williams. Diesel just won the contested footy, had the quick hands and everything. Rat was more about, probably winning the footy, but also getting to the next contest, and he'd read it off the pack. Look, he played in a great team, don't get me wrong. The greatest team of all time, probably. Our club of all time, over a period of, 30 years. They won the most flags, and, just a great, great club. I was just, the lessons I learned at that club were just amazing. Probably set me up for business and for life. But, Rat's, I love him. I was over in Adelaide last year, believe it or not, with Greg Williams, and he came to the Sportsman's Night, so we got him up on stage, and both him and Diesel couldn't remember who they were talking to, but it was pretty funny.
Well, I know that our last training session out at Central before the isolation hit, I reckon we did some handballing comps, and I reckon he stitched a few of the boys up as well.
Oh, yeah, he would too, yeah. He's a funny man too.
Yeah, he's absolute ripper. Now, I just want to touch on your relationship with Spud Frawley. Obviously, rocked the football world, rocked everyone around Australia. But you were very close with Spud for many years, weren't you?
Look, I was, and my family were close to his. Our kids grew up together, and look, I definitely didn't see coming what was coming, but I did see a deterioration in him, and I want to be careful here because it's his family who come first in all of this, and it's funny, or I shouldn't say funny. This morning, ironically, I was out doing my usual run, walk, skip over the lake sort of stuff, and he came to mind for some reason, and for some reason I thought, it's not long before it's that first year, and it's going to be heartbreaking when we get to it. And, he's a great man, lost to us, and I wish I knew why. But, I don't want to look back and sort of, I guess, wish I'd done more, because the last time I did that, I ended up in hospital myself. So I've got to focus on making sure that people who perhaps are not in a great way, I help them through it. And I know the ways now that do make that. And through the health business that I run, I've created a program called Game Changer. And I'll actually be instigating a lot of it in Adelaide, probably once we all get out of the lockdown, because I'm dealing with a lot of the construction companies over there. And basically what Game Changer is about young people setting them up for life, making sure they're happy, knowing what makes them happy. Don't want to talk about things that are negative, suicide, anxiety, depression. We don't talk about that. We talk about how to build your life and be happy. And I think I'm really looking forward to it, and working with the apprentices over there, who to me are like draft picks when Wayne Carey was 18 or Nick Rewalt was 18. That's the same thing as the apprentices I'll be dealing with in Adelaide.
On the back of that, I want to obviously go into mental health, because it's such a massive topic, especially at the moment, being in isolation. It's a even bigger topic, and sometimes, not everyone knows the 100% right way to deal with it. Obviously, I've had mates now that a couple of mates that have committed suicide, one only recently, which it's never nice. You don't really know how to deal with it and that, but you're a massive ambassador and outspeaker and quite outspoken about mental health. Ricky, what do you think, what can we see going forward? And if people are having those struggles, I know I've got mates currently having those struggles as well, what can we do as mates and as people to get around them and help them as well?
Well, the biggest thing that I stumbled on this, I suppose, but it's working for everyone I deal with, is reconnect. Reconnect with your old schoolmates. Why? Because it brings back old memories. It makes you happy. You start smiling again. Reconnect with someone you've fallen out with. Because I tell you what, I did that, and it makes you even happier again, because you hated each other, but then you reconnected. And, it's just little things like, I started getting up at probably 5:36 in the morning when I was getting up at 8. And suddenly, for some reason, after about 4 or 5 days, my body felt energetic and good. And then I started to wonder when I was 11 or so in Bendigo, in the country Victoria, till the time I was 16, I got up at 4:30 every morning and did a paper round. And I used to listen to ABBA in my big walkie-talkie old cassette recorder that you used to have back in those days. And I thought, what? I started to listen to music while I was going for a walk. I was getting up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I was starting to remember back to my childhood. I thought, this is the secret to mental health. This is the secret to being happy. And then even this week, and I don't even know where this came from, is my partner, Melissa, said, why don't we play tennis? And I haven't played tennis for, I reckon, 15 years. So I went and got the tennis racket. She was too lazy to come with me, but I went down the road to where there was a brick wall and started hitting it up against the brick wall. The first couple of times I missed the ball completely, but now I've been going back. I've been there just an hour ago, and I was just bashing it backwards and forwards and going, wow, how good's this? This is Bendigo when I was 15. This is when I used to take on Greg Williams, and we used to play tennis against the brick wall. So that's where we take our mental health programs, is we start to get you thinking about reconnecting with what makes you happy.
And obviously as well, if you don't mind, you've had your struggles with mental health and addiction and that over the time. How going through that, obviously it can be a very dark and lonely place as well. But who's probably the one person that really probably flicked the switch for you to turn things around?
I'd probably say Sam Newman. It's in publicly in my book that, Sam Newman, when he was 48, which is exactly coincidentally when I struck trouble 10 years ago, he was effectively living in the back shed of a mate's place. After having a lot of money and everything else, he unfortunately backed up a friend in a real estate deal from memory and lost the whole lot. And he was down on the bones of his backside. And, he was probably really struggling. But then what he did was he looked at himself and went, he can't play football anymore when you're 50. What can he do? And he wrote a column for the Herald Sun. And I'll never forget the first one he wrote on Dermot Brennan. I read it back to front. Why? Because it wasn't, so Dermot, why are you a good footballer or whatever else? It was like, Dermot, why do you dye your hair blonde? Are you a bit backward, are you, mate? Or something like that. And it was just questions that he got paid $50. Now he's a multi-millionaire. So he's my inspiration that you can bounce back. and also my inspiration that he came to me when I was down and out and said, Rick, you're about to find out who your true friends are. True friends stick by you through thick and thin. They mightn't agree with what you've done right or wrong, but at the end of the day, they stick with you. And there's some people I'm pretty disappointed in who I stuck up for big time, who now stuck up to me. Yet back when I was not going so well, like we're nowhere to be seen. But yet Matthew Richardson rang me and said, I'm picking you up tomorrow. And I'm going, why? He goes, because I'm taking you out for lunch because I want to stick by you. And so did Wayne Carey and so did Gary Ablett. But there were some other stars that I don't want to name who didn't do that. And, you know, your true mates, everyone listening to this, male and female, you know, just think about your mates who are down and go and do something to make them happy because it'll make you happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to just touch on, we've got a few names and a few stories to talk about there. But one I want to ask, and obviously watched her on Footy Classified the other week, Caroline Wilson, she had a bit to say. Obviously, you did the Herald Sun podcast, Sacked, which was eye-opening for a lot of people as well. And, you know, loved listening to those stories and the battles and that as well. Gives all of us inspiration. But Caroline Wilson wasn't too impressed. Have you seen the comments, and how do you get along with Caro?
Oh, she's a broomstick rider, and that's the best she'll ever be. You know, she's actually just an embarrassment to the game. She knows nothing about it. She takes great pride in just spreading absolute crap and lies. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you have to remain relevant by putting up fake news and talking absolute crap, then, you know, seriously, what's the point? I mean, I don't never watch her. I never listen. People say, oh, she said this about you last night. I don't remember any game of footy she's ever played. I don't remember her ever running a multi-million-dollar business that pioneered sports management in Australia. I don't remember her raising any money for kids with cancer. All I remember is being fat, ugly, and riding a broomstick.
No, we'll move on from there, Chucky, as
Did I
well.
make myself clear, Matty?
Hey?
Did I make myself clear?
I got it loud and clear, mate.
My partner Melissa's cracking up laughing here.
The story the other week about North moving to Tassie, certainly wasn't great as a North fan to see that.
No.
But, mate, sorry, with that as well, you've also managed Ben Cousins, and you actually decided to split from Ben yourself. What was, obviously watching him as a footballer growing up, he was amazing, and then we'll sort out that very naive to what was going on behind the scenes at sort of 10, 11, 12 years old. But to see him now, and even that last interview he did, have you spoken to Benny recently? And he's not.
I was speaking to Ben at 4 o'clock in the morning for about 3 nights. This was back probably in about early February. And it got to the point where I knew why he was ringing me at 4 in the morning. And, you know, I'm not going to go public with it. You know what I mean. People watching and listening to this know what I mean. I just feel very sad for his kids. You know, he's had so many chances, and unfortunately, I think it's fried up here. And, you know, look, I hope it works out. I really do. But the charges he's up on don't look good to me. And when you've been up on these charges before, the prosecutors and the courts won't be too forgiving. So it might be a blessing in disguise if he gets a big spell this time, because I'd like to see his kids have 3 or 4 years where they don't have to deal with this at school. You know, they've been bullied at school. They've been punched, or not punched, but I believe pushed over or whatever at school. You know, it's just heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking that Ben is in the position he's in. But addiction is a horrible thing. Most of us have got addiction in us, but some of us express it differently. You know, people always ask me, is drugs and alcohol the hardest thing you've dealt with? I said, no, gambling's the worst thing I've ever dealt with clients. And, you know, it's very difficult, this drug ice. And, you know, we've seen in Victoria last night, you know, 4 policemen killed. And from what I believe, the driver of the Porsche that's created in the first place was on ice. And I believe the truck driver who hit the policeman and killed them as well could have been on ice as well.
Yeah, it's certainly not good. So got that news today as well, which is never nice to see. But watching that last interview, did you watch it? Did you actually get to sit down and watch the last one he did?
Look, I did see it, and my partner sitting beside me at the time, when he was in the car, she looked at me and went, he's high or something. And I actually knew he was. And I for someone like my partner to say that, just said to me, wow. And then, some of the other stuff he did through it, and the fact he couldn't answer questions, people were saying he's lying. No, he's just so paranoid. He's not capable of answering. So it's sad, but, the only focus I have going forward is if his dad rang me and said, can we do something to help the kids, I'd be first person on the plane to Perth.
Yeah, fantastic as well. And now your relationship with the AFL now, how does that stand, and how do you see it?
Oh, look, I'm not one to go back over old ground, but I just think the way I was treated was disgraceful. And, the people who sit on the commission now, who have managed the game into the total disaster that it basically is unbelievable. And, you've got people on this commission who just have no football experience at all, making decisions about a game that, affects everybody across every community. So anyway, their problems are their problems. I'll worry about my own.
So how do you see, following up from that, how do you see the game of AFL? Obviously, there's rule changes every year. How are you seeing the current game state?
Well, I've been saying for 10 years, and people like, I think Lee Matthews or someone like that, or Kevin Sheedy is saying it in the last week, is we've got to change it to 16 aside because it's about scoring. We've got to get back to high scoring. We've got to get back to having characters in the game, which were key forwards who catch the footy and kick goals, just like Michael Jordan in basketball. Superstars of the game are people who are power players and kick goals. We don't have that anymore. We've got to shorten the game because people's attention spans don't exist anymore. The young generation coming through, the 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they don't want to spend 6 hours away from home, away from their mobile phone, an hour to get to the footy, an hour before it starts, game goes for 3 hours and an hour to get home and everything. They don't want that. The game's got to be shortened to 4 15-minute quarters, 16 aside. And one rule that I think is the most simplest rule that they could implement that would change everything tomorrow is no kicking backwards. No, I think handballing backwards is a little bit harder to adjudicate, particularly in the packs, but you shouldn't be able to kick the ball backwards and go around the other side of the ground and all that sort of stuff. Go forward the whole time.
I don't mind that, Chucky, at all. I'd like to see that happen. I want to just touch on a couple of your clients now and a couple of your mates, and I think there's no bigger personality, and he's a good mate of yours than the Wiz Warwick Kappa. What's he like? Is he as full on as he seems when the cameras are in front of him?
Well, if he was here right now, he'd push me out of the way and he would talk about himself the whole time. And I've never known anybody who can talk for 3 hours, but they only talk about one person. And it's extraordinary. But I know I love him. He's a ripper bloke. I mean, I know he divides people a bit. They either really love him or I wouldn't say use the word hate, but they think he's a bit crazy or zany. But look, I just always take the view that everyone's each to their own. Everyone can't be as perfect as you want them to be. Every star is different. I used to say if there was a brick wall if James Hird and Wayne Carey were standing here, there's a brick wall and a football on the other side, who would get there first? And the answer is they both get there at the same time. Wayne Carey would smash the bloody brick wall over and James Hird would think his way around it. So two different blokes, but two superstars of the game.
Yeah, no, I reckon that Big Brother AFL Footy Show Big Brother appearance of Kappas is putting in protocol for my generation. I know we're going around school trying to take everything on each other after all that. But the other one, let's go back. We'll go to Gary Ablett Senior. If not, as you say, up there with Carey, one of the best in the competition. A lot of chat, and even Gaz Junior as well. He's actually they're not really big media people. You got your players that do a lot of media, but what are they like behind the scenes? And do they just like to keep to themselves a lot of the time?
Yeah, look, I mean, Gary taught me a great lesson in life, and for everyone who's watching this right now, is that you can't expect everybody to be the same. And I remember when Gary retired, I got him a deal with the Footy Show for like 140 grand or something, which back in those days, that was like probably $1 million. And I'm thinking 20% of that, I've got a new BMW here. Anyway, he said, no, Rick, I don't want to do it. In fact, I want to go out fishing. I said, out fishing? He goes, yeah. So we get on a boat, we go out fishing. I go, well, what do you want to talk to me about? He goes, Rick, have you ever thought, I don't want to be like everybody else. I don't like the attention. I like to be quiet. Yes, I like playing football, but I don't like everything that comes with football. I just want to be Gary Ablett. And I went, wow, I just always thought that everybody wants to be a millionaire, I suppose, and it was my job to make the millionaires. But here's a bloke telling me that no, I don't. Money isn't my life. Having big houses in Toorak isn't my life. I like to be quiet. I like to. At that stage, he was very religious. He liked to go to church. Each to their own. I love Gary. Him and I chat regularly now. And probably the funniest story, and apologies to those who have heard this one before, but it is the funniest story I've ever heard in footy, is I used to have a phone in my office for players only, and it rang one day and I said, hello, thinking it was Carey or someone like that. And this voice goes, oh, Ricky, it's Gary Ablett. I'm going, yeah, of course it is. Bang, hang up. Rings again. Ricky, it's really Gary Ablett. I've gone, oh, sorry. What do you want? He goes, oh, I heard you and Wayne Carey $100,000 last year off the field. If you earn me 100,000, I'll sign with you for 10 years. I said, Gary, I'll get you 100,000 in 2 weeks if you sign with me for 15 years. He goes, all right, done. I hung up, and I swear this is true. The phone rang 5 minutes later, and this guy goes, oh, Ricky, you don't know me. My name's Phil. I'm from Peter the Lombard Paper People. Do you manage Gary Ablett? I said, yes. Been managing him forever. He goes, oh, good. We want to do a life-size cardboard cutout of him. Would 50 grand be all right? I said, 50? It's Gary Ablett. He goes, what about 100? I said, done. Hung up the phone, rang Gary. I said, I got you the 100 already. He goes, you're a guru. You're unbelievable. I said, no worries. You just got to be the photographer at 3 o'clock on Sunday. At 11 o'clock in the morning. He turned up at 3 o'clock. And he brought Gary and Nathan, his two sons, with him. They were 11 and 12 at the time. And these two little shits were carrying on, pushing, shoving, fighting. Gary was in the toilets coming his one strand of air for about 3 hours. They knocked over a light stand. The photographer came running out. Gary came running out. Oh, my God. The photographer goes, that's it. I've had enough of these kids. Goes over to his computer. He prints off a picture of Gary taking the mark of the century over Gary Pert at the MCG. He gives it to the two kids, and he goes, now, piss off. The two kids go, Dad, could you sign it for us? And now, you think about this, Matt. Have you ever asked your dad for an autograph? I've never asked my dad for an autograph. What do you reckon Gary said to his kids? Nah, piss off. I said, Gary, it's your own kids. The photographer's gone, that's it, Mr. Hotshot Agent. He said, I'm taking these kids out of the room. You've got 3 minutes to fix this or the money's off the table. I went, no, my new BMW's off the table. He takes the kids out. I said, Gary, please, I'm down on my hands and knees. Will you sign it for your own kids? He said, Rick, I'm not signing it. I said, Gary, it's your own kids. He said, Rick, I'm not signing it. I've been up to the school 3 times this week to see the principal. These two little pricks have been bringing home footy cards. I've been signing them. They've been selling them for $70. And it gets bloody funnier, Matt. So I saw Gary Jr. about 10 years later, and he said, I need to speak to you, chicken. I said, well, I thought, shit, he's upset with me. He goes, mate, I hear you tell this bullshit story at every footy club you go to that we sold cards of our dad signed for $70. And I said, yeah? Well, it's true. He goes, it's not true. It's absolutely not true. I said, so you didn't sell cards of your dad signed for $70? He goes, no. I said, oh, I'm so sorry, mate. He said, no, we got 150.
That's not a bad little money spinner at school.
Listen like that one too.
That's got the tick. But Yaz, he was an unbelievable player. Then Wayne Carey, he was something else. Yep. Obviously, yep. As a North fan, and actually getting the opportunity to have a chat to Wayne and about it all. But obviously, the incident which saw him leave North Melbourne, you're at the forefront of that. It must have been in your position to get that phone call. Must have been a bit of a shock.
Yeah, look, it was, but I guess a lot of people ask me that, and I say, look, you got to understand that I didn't go out to the front lawn, pick up the Herald Sun and go, oh my God, I already knew what had happened. And, Wayne rang me and admitted what had happened. And, look, it was a very difficult time for everybody. And look, I'm very good friends with Anthony Stevens. And, Steve-O and I to this day, we never talk about it, but I see him. And, I actually, when he came and confronted Wayne, Glenn was with Glenn Archer, and Glenn was very upset and was on the sofa, bawling his eyes out. And Anthony was outside in the gutter, basically. And I went out and just held him for an hour. And I'll never forget that time where we just didn't, we didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to take sides with Wayne because, what he did was wrong. And, we've all made mistakes. You have, I have, and everybody watching this. But, unfortunately, his mistakes played out through the media, and, and it wasn't a good thing, that's for sure. But it's a bit like Sam Newman said, you don't have to endorse a mistake a friend makes or back it up, but you stick by them as a friend. And, Anthony and Wayne and Glenn, for that matter, are all good friends of mine, because back in the day, North Melbourne were the team of the 90s. And, I had most of their players, Corey McKernan, etc., and still good friends with them all today.
And just to the deal to get for Wayne to then move across to Adelaide, how did that come about? And were you still involved with Wayne at that stage?
No, that's when we split up actually, because probably a fair bit to do with what had happened, to be honest. And Wayne was probably a little bit, I would say, hell bent on going his way. And then, he had to leave the club anyway. So I sort of walked away from it at that stage. And, it was a very, I'd say looking back now, it was a good 6 years before all the crap hit the fan with me. But it was probably one of the trigger points that, started me off on a road that probably I shouldn't have been going down. Getting home late, drinking all the time, trying to make yourself be happy. I've learnt the lessons now that that's not the way to make yourself happy.
Absolutely. And just tell us, obviously you don't have to go into too much detail, but that period for you, that little, what was it, probably 6-7 year period, obviously the St Kilda incident and a few other incidents. Just tell us a little bit about that and obviously the battle.
It's not what people think it is. It's as simple as that. My number one client wasn't Wayne Carey at the time. It was Clinton Gribus, the up-and-coming superstar in the media. He died in his sleep at 32. And he'd come to see me a week before, and I knew something was wrong with him. And I told him to go to the doctor, and it was the day before Christmas, and he said he did. And I hung up the phone going, he didn't go to the doctor. And 4 days later, he was dead. I was absolutely shattered. I probably shouldn't have blamed myself, but I did. And I did the same last year with Danny Frawley. And it won't ever happen to me again. Is sometimes some things are meant to be, and, you can't stop them. You're better off working on dealing with it after it than going, what could have I done before it? So, that just really hurt me, the Clinton stuff. And I won't go into huge detail what it transpired the next day, but there was a family issue, and that led to more problems, and that led to my drinking, etc., and me making some silly decisions. And, they're things I'll regret for the rest of my life. But at the same time, my focus is my partner, Melissa, and my two sons, Mitchell and Lewis, and making sure they're set up for life and happy for life. And if they're happy, then I'm happy.
Absolutely. Well, let's wrap that up as well with what is Ricky Nixon doing now? Obviously, touched on, you got health service, but player management. What's going on in the life of Ricky Nixon at the moment?
There's a lot going on actually in the sports side of it. Look, not everyone, a lot of people want me to go back into player management. I don't want to, but my son's keen to go into it, and I am encouraged about perhaps coaching him and godfathering the business. But also I've been working for quite a while on a project, which I won't tell you what the name of it is because someone will go and copyright it tomorrow. But effectively, it'll be an online school about and teaching people from elite people's point of view of how to be what you've always wanted to be. And that includes things like being an AFL coach, being a sports agent, being a basketballer, getting your kid drafted, getting yourself drafted. It'll be all the things that you wish you knew how to do, but I'll be teaching them to you, and I'm pretty excited about that. And the health business I'm running has been going right off. It's been particularly motivating just to get out and help people, and finding some young people with melanomas on their arms that could have been dead in 18 months. That's I wouldn't say inspiring, but it's making people realise you're never too young or old to have a health check. And look, with this coronavirus, whether we like it or not, we've got to deal with it. And hopefully in about 6 to 8 weeks, I'm going to have a test kit that you can use at home to test for coronavirus. Now, if I get that, well, that's just going to be super exciting in respect to getting out and helping people. Looking forward to that. And the other big thing that I do that I really love is kids with cancer and helping them. I mean, I've got some ripper kids who no one deserves a 10-year-old to have brain cancer, and their parents find them not breathing in bed. And little Charlotte and some other kids that I'm helping at the moment, what I do is get them into the rooms before a game of who they barrack for. Marcus Bonampelli was absolutely brilliant the other night. He did a video for Charlotte, who barracks for the Western Bulldogs. What he said, I went, wow, you are the next Wayne Carey, the way he spoke. And that just is something, giving to other people, I think, is what life's got to be about. And, I love doing it. I love helping these kids, and I love seeing the look on their face. And the greatest joy for me is every kid that I've dealt with at the moment is in remission. And I think it's got a lot to do with being happy and smiling and being up and about and, meeting your heroes and all that's just bloody brilliant.
No, it is. There's absolutely nothing better, Ricky. Mate, thank you for your time, and great to see all the good work you're doing, mate. Thank you for taking the time out to join us at KOTNmedia as well. I know the boys were looking forward to this one. So, mate, thank you for taking the time out, and I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Matty, and thank you to everyone at Cotton. And don't forget one thing: toot toot.
Thanks, Ricky.